The Obama campaign is preparing for a legal slugfest. Talk about paranoia and this atmosphere of fear over how tight this race is going to be. They have essentially, according to an AP story, dispatched thousands of attorneys and support staffers to various swing states to provide legal support in case something amiss happens at the polls. This year, Florida alone, according to the AP, Obama and his Democratic allies are poised to have thousands of lawyers ready for the election and hope to have more than the 5,800 attorneys that were available 4 years ago. 5,800 in Florida alone, and that was 4 years ago. We're going to have more. So I think it's safe to say that the Obama campaign is worried. And also, I think this is speaking to what might be a new era of litigiousness around voting. And whether it's voter fraud or voter suppression, there seems to be some fear that things aren't going to go according to plan. And this, of course, brings up 2000 and Bush Gore and the fear that instills in all of us. And, of course, there are now 30 states that have enacted voter ID laws, many of which have only gone into effect in the past year, as you can see on the map. So this makes the electoral landscape sort of rife with potential for misfires and problems. So the question I have for the table is this really another Bush-Gore kind of potential situation? Or do you think this is really just the Obama campaign getting a little nervous that this is going to be close and thinking they might have to win this on a couple hundred votes here and there?
I don't think the Obama campaign is nervous. I think when I look at these polls that you put up that show these important swing states, and he's got some pretty significant leads, it's hard for me to derive from that.
19 weeks out, but yes.
Fair enough. But it's hard for me to look at that and go, ooh, these guys are nervous. In the states that matter, he's doing pretty well, 19 weeks out. It's worth saying this. One of the hallmarks of a first-rate democracy, a first-world democracy, one with the gold standard is the peaceful transition of power, right? And you want to see an opposite of that? Look at the Mexican presidential election. What was it, just 6 years ago when Obrador, was that his name? And he's running for president again this year. But anyways, he lost. He contested the vote. He filled the square in Mexico City up with protesters. And that lasted for months over who actually won that election.
Look at Egypt.
Look at Egypt. And people, again, can point to what happened here in 2000. I just hope this isn't a predicate for that kind of situation, and certainly not one, as you suggested, where we might be seeing this long into the future as a trend.
And interestingly, in the AP article, an elections law expert said we're in an era of increased litigiousness over the voting process. And he talks about something he's calling a margin of litigation. And when these states are so close, he's calling this closeness that margin of litigation, which I just find really interesting. Is that new? Is that a modern day phenomenon?
That phrase also jumped out at me, and I made a little note to myself, margin of litigation. And unfortunately, I think this is the new normal. If we remember back in 2004, John Kerry did not immediately concede the election results that night. He waited until he looked at Ohio, the big key battleground state there. And I think with this new phrase is basically, I need to talk to my lawyer first. And particularly when you have these elections that were so close. But looking at Ohio in 2004, there was a recount in Ohio. It was triggered by a Green Party candidate and a Libertarian presidential candidate who wanted to go back and make sure that George Bush won the state of Ohio. He won it by 118,000 over that votes the first time around. After the recount that wasn't even concluded until after Christmas, again, George Bush won with over 118,000 votes. But that just goes to show you that with the stakes this big, it looks like people are turning to the courts just, I guess to be double-cross my heart sure.
And the stakes are big. I think that's an excellent point. The stakes are really big. But also with our voter ID laws and voter fraud and voter suppression, these are key issues that frankly aren't always key issues. These are, I think, going to open up a lot of a can of worms.
I think the Democrats, there's sort of a broad mythology around this. I think that they really like to like to continue to have people at all these places because even if there's sort of a hint, an allegation, a whisper about specifically voter suppression for them,
Yeah.
you'll hear about it for the next 4 years. So they know
Absolutely.
it's a built-in talking point. And I think that's kind of insidious. I think it's really dangerous stuff because you're talking about the peaceful transition of democracy. It seems now that they like to at least create circumstances where there could be people that just make these unsubstantiated
Yeah,
claims
we
in some
should-
cases, and then down the line, you'll continue to hear about how, well, that state was stolen. And I know not everyone will say that, but enough people say it, and it reappears enough in the media. I mean, the fact of the matter is people still think the Supreme Court handed the election to George Bush, even after everything, even the New York Times
Completely
said,
verified.
it's been completely
Right,
verified
right,
that George
right.
Bush won Florida, but you create this mythology that I think is problematic.